our viewers on streaming here on live Facebook and our studio audience and my guest here. Good afternoon. I'm Mama Joy, and welcome to the Melody of Joy Institute, a healing ministry that educates, entertains, encourages, and empowers to be instruments of tangible change while moving forward and evolving towards actual freedom. Oh, I tell you, I am so excited. This day, we're going to continue. This is our 51st presentation of the Emancipation Proclamation. Hey, let me have a yell on that one. Number 5-1. Yes, 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 yes. And this year, we are examining the profound letter of Dr. Martin Luther King, the Birmingham jail letter. Originally was called "The Negro is Your Brother." Yes. This letter is so rich with wisdom and keys that still is applicable today towards for us to be able to get our self-emancipation and sign our own Emancipation Proclamation. I tell you, I'm excited today because 2018 also is a year that we are introducing the new, not the New Testament, forgive me. It's the Now Testament of the series. Yeah, correctly. You know, I'm so used to saying Old Testament, New Testament, but we are the Now Testimony. And our series is an Authors of Now Testament Author Series. And we are just so very excited about that. And so we have prepared, there are 12 months we're going to have our authors. And these are authors that Dr. Martin Luther King said so eloquently, that have just reached down into the very inner sources of their very soul, and with pen and ink sign and declare their own assertive manhood, their own assertive womanhood, for their own self-emancipation. Yes, let me calm down. Today I have with me author Ernest Abdullah. Hey, hey, hey. Author of The Game of Life and How to Play It. And to my right, I have Queen Hostess Claudette Redic. All right. And her book is titled Instant Ain't Everything. And today our distinguished guest, we have Dr. Minister, Reverend, Queen Myeka Bevel. We are so delighted to have her with us today. Such an honor. And her book, as you can see here, is The Nonviolent Right to Vote Movement, Almanac, which is a book that is so profound. I tell you, it's just, in fact, I'll get to it when I introduce her to it. But this is a marvelous manual that every American should have. Every American should have in their home. So we're so very delighted to have this group. And so we are into our third part of the Dr. Martin Luther King letter. The letter was so extensive until just sitting at one time, well, this will not do. So every month we're taking a portion of that letter, and one letter that he scribbled on scraps of paper and scrap paper, paper towels, margin of newspapers or whatever he could, because he was moved by a publication that was done in Birmingham by 8 clergy, 8 church Christian, oh no, there was one rabbi who wrote this letter and published it. And so I'm going to ask author Ernest Abdullah to read the book, read the publication. Many of us are not aware of the fact that Dr. Martin Luther King just didn't decide to write a letter in the jail. He was in jail, but there were forces outside that jail that was discouraging the people to support him. And this was the church that was in Alabama. Would you please read that for us, please?
Yes, indeed.
Woo!
A public statement by Alabama clergyman. April 12th, 1963. We, the undersigned clergymen, are among those who in January issued an appeal for law and order and common sense in dealing with racial problems in Alabama. We expressed understanding that convictions, that honest convictions in racial matters could properly be pursued in the courts, but urged that these decisions should, in the meantime, be peacefully obeyed. Since that time, there has been some evidence of increased forbearance and a willingness to face facts. Reasonable citizens have undertaken to work on various problems which cause racial frictions and unrest. In Birmingham, recent public events have given indication that we all have opportunity for a new, constructive, and realistic approach to racial problems. However, we are now confronted by a series of demonstrations by some of our Negro citizens, directed and led in part by outsiders. We recognize the natural impatience of people who feel that their hopes are slow in being realized, but we're convinced that these demonstrations are unwise and untimely. Yes, indeed. We agree rather with certain local Negro leadership, which has called for honest and open negotiation of racial issues in our area. And we believe this kind of facing of issues can best be accomplished by citizens of our own metropolitan area, white and Negro, meeting with their knowledge and experience of this local situation. All of us need to face the fact that responsibility and proper channels for this accomplishment. Just as we formerly pointed out, hatred and violence have no sanction in our religious and political traditions. We also point out that such actions as incited to racial and violence have technically peaceful. However, technically and peaceful, those actions have not contributed to the resolution of our local problems. We do not believe that these days of new hope are days when extreme measures are justified in Birmingham. We commend the community as a whole, and the local news media, and the law enforcement in particular, on calm manner in which these demonstrations have been handled. We urge the public to continue to show restraint should the demonstrations continue, and the law enforcement officials to remain calm and continue to protect our city from violence. We further strongly urge our own Negro community to withdraw support from these demonstrations and to unite locally in working peacefully for a better Birmingham. When rights are consistently denied, a cause should be pressed in the courts and in negotiations among local leaders and not in the streets. We appeal to both our white and Negro citizenry to observe the principles of law and order and common sense. This is signed by C.C.J. Carpenter, Joseph A. Durick, Rabbi Hilton Granlund, Bishop Paul Harding, Bishop Nolan B. Harmon, George M. Murray, Edward B. Ramage, and Earl Stalling. Thank you.
All right now. All right. Now I hope that you were able to understand what author Ernest Abdullah just read. This was 1963, approximately 100 years after the signing of the Emancipation, or the issuance, I should say, of the Emancipation Proclamation, and just a couple of years before the 13th Amendment. So this was a very significant document that he's speaking about. He's speaking about the protesters who published this. And remember, the South still were sovereign states. They made their own laws. They made their own laws and they stuck to that. So these people were discouraging, and these were church clergy. That's why it's so important for us to understand our history and to understand there was a lot of complexity in who was involved and what was involved in keeping our people down. So we're going to continue on now with an excerpt from the Birmingham jail letter. And this is Dr. Martin Luther King responding to this publication. And he was deeply, deeply disturbed.
Thank you, Joy. And for those of you who did not see our presentation last month, I urge you to go back, because in that was Martin's initial response, talking about he too represented a large and sizable Christian community. And he responded in that excerpt. So today, when I get this part 3 of the letter, 19 pages you said it was the man wrote, the margins of newspapers, I'm excited because all of that conversation didn't really result in anything. They used words to try to keep us back all the time. And then Martin said it's time for some direct action. So part 3, he begins or continues his conversation with them by stating, then last September came the opportunity to talk with leaders of Birmingham's economic community. In the course of negotiations, certain promises were made by the merchants. For example, they were going to remove those stores' humiliating racial signs. And on the basis of these promises, the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth and the leaders of Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights agreed to a moratorium on all demonstrations. As the weeks and the months went by, we realized that we were the victims of a broken promise. Now, this is once again. A few signs briefly removed returned, and others, they remained. They never left those storefronts. And as in so many past experiences, our hopes had been blasted, and a shadow of deep disappointment settled upon us. We had no alternative except to prepare for direct action, whereby we would present our very bodies as a means of laying our case before the conscience of the local and national community. Mindful of the difficulties involved, we decided to undertake a process of self-purification. We began a series of workshops on nonviolence, and we repeatedly asked ourselves, are you able to accept blows without retaliating? Are you able to endure the ordeal of jail? We decided to schedule our direct action program for the Easter season. You know how we love to shop. And Martin realized that except for Christmas, this is the main shopping period of the year. And knowing that a strong economic withdrawal program would be the byproduct of direct action, we felt that this would be the best time to bring pressure to bear on the merchants for needed change. Then it occurred to us that Birmingham's mayoral elections were coming up in March, and we speedily decided to postpone action until after election day. Anybody know about that? And when we discovered that the Commissioner of Public Safety, the infamous Eugene Bull Connor, had piled up enough votes to be in the runoff, we decided again to postpone action until the day after the runoff so that these demonstrations, these peaceful demonstrations we anticipated, could not be used to cloud issues. Like many others, we waited to see Mr. Connor defeated. And to this end, we endured postponement after postponement. Having aided in this community need, we felt that our direct action program could be delayed no longer. You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path? You are quite right in assuming this and calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such attention in a community which has constantly refused to negotiate and is being forced to confront this issue. It seeks so to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. My citing the creation of tension as part of the work of the nonviolent resistor may sound rather shocking, but I must confess that I am not afraid of that word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but there is a type of constructive nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. It's got to change. And just as Socrates felt that it was necessary to create a tension in the mind so that individuals could rise from the bondage of myths and half-truths to the unfettered realm of creative analysis and objective appraisal, so must we see the need for non-violent gadflies to create the kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. The purpose of our direct action program is to create a situation so crisis-packed that it will inevitably open the door to negotiation. I therefore concur with you in your call for negotiation. Too long has our beloved Southland been bogged down in a tragic effort to live in a monologue rather than a dialogue.
Wow. That was profound. That was profound. And you know, as you were reading, the thoughts came across my mind. I wonder how many classrooms in America read that letter. That man, Dr. Martin Luther King, was a true American because he laid it out for those clergymen and for those who came after to understand the courage, the intelligence, the strategy, and it's just amazing. The high level of his communication. There was nothing to say that this man was something coming from low. He's had high consciousness in operation there. And I'm just so grateful. We're part of history. And my granddaughter, we just had Black history. And my thought, she came to me, she says, Mom, I asked my teacher why we don't have more Black history. Why are we not talking about it more? And she said, well, we talked about it. We talked about the Freedom Riders. She said, but it's more than just the Freedom Riders. And she says, well, we did a few things. And so we covered it. And my granddaughter said, well, my grandmother could tell you a lot more.
Did she say that to the
She told the teacher. And her friend was in it. She said, sure can. And you know what the teacher said to her? Her response was, is your grandmother alive? And she said, is she alive? And her friend said, yeah, she looks like she's about 50. She talks all the time. And she said, what? Because even the teachers are not aware of their history, not Black history, American history. This man was a profound. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, because I really want to hear how he persevered and how did he deal with all those promises. I mean, they were constantly telling a man in the headlines around the world, not just here locally, but around the world. And they would tell him stuff and lie and take it back. So how did he keep going with all those broken promises?
He was a man of faith. He knew his mission. And as we started in the very beginning, he claimed to be the gospel, the carrier of the gospel of freedom. And remember, he was in a position where he had 85 organizations throughout the nation. So this man was very powerful and had affiliations. Myeka, you have a comment as well?
Yeah, I just want to give a little backdrop on Alabama. You know, in Alabama at that time, NAACP had been banned from Alabama. And so what happened in Alabama was that local leadership developed as a result of the NAACP having been banned. So you had people like Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, who came into the forefront of leadership in Birmingham at that particular time. Also, Dr. King, having talked to Reverend James Bevel, who's my teacher as well as my husband, he said that the way they operated was more or less as dead men. As far as they were concerned, if they didn't have free agency and if they couldn't do the things that God directed them to do, then they were already dead. So they didn't have to fear anything. That eliminated the fear of death for them. So they could step forward. Now, this letter that the clergyman wrote, it literally did paralyze the adult population in Birmingham so that they weren't able to organize the adults to go to jail, to protest, to do marches. And that's what led to the children eventually being organized to fill the jail. Because as far as they were taught that as far as living, freedom was for them. It was their responsibility to stand up, to be free people. Otherwise, they'd be like their parents, slaves. So I just wanted to share that.
That is.
Thank you.
I just want to throw in one other part to that. I could see the deep disappointment that was like a veil, because as I was alive there and all these deaths were happening, it took a long time for me to get over feeling. I didn't know why I was just feeling that. I was grieving. Everything that we were asking for, pushing for, working for was denied. Some more broken hearts. So my spirit was really dampened during that time.
Oh, okay. I want to just make a comment on that. Here we are in 2018, and on the steps of the Capitol, who's taking the stand? The children. The children. But these children, who were the predecessors who faced the dogs, faced the water hose, faced the bullets and all that? It was our children. Thank you. I know. But anyway. Said, how do we deal with broken promises and knowing this change is uncomfortable? Well, very few people are very comfortable in America. And I'm so proud that we have this panel here discussing this, and we have such a distinguished guest, Myeka Bevel, to give us firsthand. My God, we'll be hearing more from her as we go forth. Claudette, thank you so very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so very much.
You see, emancipation must come from within, as Dr. King said, and we'll share that now.
Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. I said to the group last night, nobody else can do this for us. No document can do this for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Kennisonian or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. Negro is to be free, he must move down into the inner resources of his own soul and sign with the pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation.
And of course, we know.
Believe in yourself and believe.
Let's give a hand for Dr. Martin Luther King, whose spirit is alive. And we're living not in the shadows, but in the light of the greatness and the truth that this man had. We thank God for him. And as he referenced manhood, it is a dawning of a day now where women are beginning to understand that they too have a very important part. It was their time, and God knows I just embraced the man. But I like to look at the man. Let's see. Elijah Muhammad's son. Can you remember his name? Okay. Well, anyway, Muhammad told, he says, man means mind. Wallace Muhammad. W. Wallace Muhammad. That's right. He said, man means mind. And I like that, mind, because we are all made in the image and likeness of God, and we are all the divine mind of God, and we're expressions of that divine mind. And so right now, asserting her own womanhood, I'd like for you to welcome our special guest author, Queen Myeka Helen Bevel, author of the Nonviolent Right to Vote Movement Almanac. I wish you would see this book. When I received this book, I had ordered it from Myeka some time before. I knew it must weigh about 10 pounds. Well, I ordered it from her, and so she found me in the park during the festival, the WVON festival that we have in the park. And she was walking around. She said, "Oh, I just knew I was going to see you here." I said, "Really? How did you think it?" She said, "I just knew it." She said, "I've got your book for you." I said, "You got my book? Oh, wow. So she said she went into her tote, she picked it up, and she handed it to me, and I just about dropped. I said, "You kidding? Is this the book?" So this book is a labor, when I said labor of love, this book, I don't know how long it took for her to get this, but I tell you, this is a jewel. And again, I said, every home in America should have it. So now I'm going to move on further and let this great woman, this great mind, do a short presentation, and then we're going to ask some questions because we're just honored to have this gift. She's a mother, she's a grandmother, she's an author, she's very creative, and she has so many talents. She has her own show, a blog radio show, and so she'll tell us all about that. But in the meantime, she said she's got something special for us. So let's have it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here, and I am so thankful that you have taken the time to express what this book has meant to you, because it's meant a lot to me and to everyone who has actually received it. I'm going to tell you how it came into being, more or less. I am the historian of our family, the Bevel family. And one day I was sitting around and I was thinking, I said, I have all this material from the perspective of the strategists of the 60s movement. You see, most of the information that people have gotten, they've gotten it from onlookers, authors who've come in and interviewed onlookers. And they have a perspective, and it's a real perspective. However, Reverend James Bevel was the strategist. He was the man behind the scenes making things happen. His title in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, was Director of Nonviolent Education and Director of Direct Action. Those were his responsibilities, to make things happen, so that when things were happening, that he'd bring Dr. King in to elucidate why they were doing the things they were doing and to galvanize the world to support their actions. So I have all this material. I still do. I have hundreds of cassette tapes because I would take his lectures, our family gatherings, our meetings. And in these tapes, there are all these segments where he explains what was happening in the movement. So, and then I have his notebooks and his papers, and I said, how if something happens to me? This material would basically be lost to the public. So I started devising ways to disseminate this material, and this became a part of it. So, yeah. So there's so much information in here that the general public has never even seen, like the actual proposal for the Selma Right to Vote movement. It's in this book. It's never been published anywhere else. There are all kinds of tidbits and, just unknown stuff about what happened that he shared with me that I wanted to share with the public. And I just started doing that. And so the other thing that I've created of recent is the 365 calendar, the 365 days of celebrated and hidden figures African ancestral calendar. That is, for 365 days, there are a number of things on each day that happen in American history as it relates to the African American people. What's your birthday? Let's see what happened on your birthday.
300.
Wow.
Oh my God.
August 31st. There were a lot of things that happened on August 31st. August 31st was quite a day in history. I always start with the earliest happening. In 1842, Josephine Ruffin was born. She was Woman's Era first newspaper publisher. She was an African American. Josephine Ruffin. In 1842. In 1928, Charles L. Giddens was born. He was the first African American U.S. Secret Service agent. In 1935, Frank Robinson was born. He was Major League Baseball outfielder and manager. He won Most Valuable Player honors in both the National and American League. In 1935, Eldridge Cleaver was born. Civil rights leader, Black Panther, and author. In 1936, Marva Collins was born on August 31st. Educator, who in 1975 started the West Side Preparatory School and was actually offered Secretary of Education position. In 1945, Ernie Shavers was born. He was the 1969 National AAU heavyweight boxing champ. In 1955, Edwin Moses was born. Track and field athlete, gold medals in 1976 and the 1984 Olympics. And in 1957, Kalila Mashu, who comes from Chicago, she was born. She's a sun dancer. That's with the Native Americans. The highest, sun dancing is the highest Native American sacred ceremony. She was the first African American and the only female to sit on the council of the Pachamama Native American Church. That's Kalila Mashu. So she was the last one that I have on the 31st. But there's a quote here. It says, when the condor of the South and the eagle of the North fly together, it will be a sign that the children of Mother Earth are reawakening. So like you were just talking about your granddaughter, did you say, was talking about we need more history? This is the history. And did you know that the state of Illinois is mandated, it's the only state in the nation that's mandated to teach African American history, and they just haven't found a way. My suggestion is you get the calendar and like a week ahead of time, you assign a student to pick a date, pick an event that happened on that date, and do further research. And then in the last 15 minutes of class on that particular day, you give your report. That's simple, too. And then that, as a result of that, every child, we have African American history every day, 5 days a week at least. So, and I think the churches should do the same thing. When they doing their Sunday service, that day they should look in the calendar and see what happened and have had somebody to do further research. So like say if that particular day Marvin Gaye was born, then they might bring his music. You know, what's going on? Because we really do need to deal with what's going on. So this is how this book came into being, and I'm constantly creating other avenues by which to express and delineate our history so that it becomes a vital, significant, and enriched part of our lives because it's so important. I want you to read something, Joy. Do you need your glasses to read? No. Okay, get the mic. I want you to read these 4 statements on why African American history is so important.
On the 365 calendar in King's Special Edition, this quote is by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He said, we should emphasize not Negro history, but the Negro in history. Quote by George Orwell. He says, the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. I just have to make a comment on that. I had a teacher, I had a professor who was very clearly Asian. And he had a name, Cruz. I couldn't wait till class was over to find out how you got Cruz. Was your daddy an Englishman or what? And you know what he told me? He looked at me, he says, you don't know your history. I said, excuse me? He said, I'm a Filipino. I said, yeah. And he said, when the Spanish came, they took away all of our libraries, our books, our history. They destroyed all the temples and everything that we have. He said, all I know is European history. There's nothing of my people. And they also gave our people a name. How many of you know that? That's what happened to the Philippines. And there are other Asians like that, even some of the Vietnamese that I've heard too. So I had to type that in. The next was about Al-Haji Malik El-Shabazz. To us, we all know him as Malcolm X. He said, history is a people's memory. And without a memory, man is denoted to the lower animals. And the last one that you asked me for is from Dr. Naim Akbar. He said, if you know the greatness from which you have come, then that can begin to give you the keys to rebuild what you can be.
And he's a psychologist.
Naim Akbar, I know him.
Yes, he's a psychologist. He's concluded that one of the most important things for us is to get to know our history, to give our children their history, which gives them something to build on. Our history is like our foundation, and it has to be truthful, and it has to be presented in a way that uplifts us as a people. That's what the 365 calendar is designed to do. Because anytime somebody reads what happened on their birthday, they start feeling good.
That's right, it empowered me. And look at here, I'm just going to project this.
Go ahead.
This is from the poet laureate, Maya Angelou. Hey, everybody, I encourage you to get this calendar. She says, the more you know of your history, the more liberated you are.
Absolutely. Myeka, absolutely. This is a special calendar, and I've got a special place for it. My bathroom.
That's a good place.
Really, people come away, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And it's such great stories. And just a current aside, as you said, when you don't know your history, you're lost. A friend recently experienced what they call global cognitive amnesia. From one moment to the next, did not know person. So I can imagine as they work to eliminate our history, so we don't know who we are. We too share the same dismay or uncertainty about
And that's why our children are tearing up Walmarts and what have you when other children are protesting gun violence, because they don't have a secure history that says, okay, Dr. Martin Luther King said it's either nonviolence or non-existence. You know, they don't get in school, and that question is not asked. Well, what did he mean by non-existence? And what did he mean by nonviolence? See, nonviolence for the average person has been interpreted by cowards. You literally have to be a nonviolent person to understand the depths of nonviolence. Like Dr. King, extremely courageous. Extremely courageous man. For them to go against Bull Connor, Jim Clark, and all the other ones. George Wallace, come on. It's easy to be complacent like the clergyman who wrote that letter. It's easy. We don't have to do nothing. We're all right. Don't rock the boat, you know? Just go along with the status quo. It'll be all right in 100 years. It'll change.
It took 50 years to respond to
right.
that. Okay? He wrote a letter and it took 50 years before they could respond to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the calendar can be gotten at 365knowyourhistory.com. That's the website, 365knowyourhistory.com. And this is the special edition, Dr. Martin Luther King. It'll be sold all year round because it has all kind of information from Reverend James L. Bevel about Dr. King and who he was and what he did and why he did it. Like this past Thursday, I have a blog talk radio show. It comes on 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every morning, CST, Central Standard Time. And the call-in number is 515-605-9325. And this past Thursday, I was honored to interview Judge Joe Brown of television fame. And Judge Joe Brown just happened to be the judge who was in charge of the James Earl Ray, the accused murderer of Dr. King, judge for his appeal. He was appealing to throw out the plea bargain that he had been talked into, and he wanted a fair and impartial trial by a jury of his peers. And so Judge Joe Brown was able to review all of the evidence. And on Thursday's show, he stepped up with courage, transparency. Everybody who's heard the show has said, I'm just amazed at that man. I need to work with him. I need to talk with him. I need to be in a think tank with him. Okay? And he laid out from the ballistics to everything what transpired that led to the murder of Dr. King. Now, don't you think with the 50th memorial anniversary on April 4th, 2018 of Dr. King's murder, don't you think everybody needs an upgrade and come up to date with the latest understanding of what happened? That's what time it is. Absolutely. And if you don't know what happened, I've been on the bus and I talk to people and say, well, who do you know based on the latest understanding killed Dr. Martin Luther King? Oh, James Earl Ray. Did you know that, and Judge Brown said this, did you know that James Earl Ray wasn't even in Memphis at the time that Dr. King got killed?
Right.
He wasn't even in Memphis.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you what he said because I want you to go to the archives at the Females Solution on Blog Talk Radio and just scroll down to that show and listen to it yourself. There's no better way than to get it straight from the authority about what happened. I mean, he covers the ballistics information, everything concerned with the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'm having it on again this Thursday. Part 2. This man has so much to share, and he's not afraid to give it out. He's going to be dealing with manhood. He had a quote. He said, in order to protect women that means you have to promote Black manhood. That's what you have to do. Yeah. Yeah. And he elucidated that too. So I want to just thank you again, Joy, and everybody who's here for giving me this opportunity to share. I did have some more information I wanted to share that's new. I'm just going to throw it out real quick. Did you know that when John Brown decided to do his raid on Harper's Ferry, that there were actually 5 Black men in his army? Who knew that? 5 Black men. And one of them, Mr. Leary, he was married to a woman. After he was murdered, she married a man. They had a child, and their child married Mr. Hughes, and they became the father of Langston Hughes. Yes, Langston Hughes came out of that. And I wanted to share 2 things about that. One, just a quick reading. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Langston
Hold it
Hughes,
back.
ooh, yes. I am America.
Yes, that's my man.
I am America.
It's this statement says, I too sing
I
America.
sing America, and I'm America.
And his birthday was January 1st, I think it was. Yeah, I honored him on my show. John Brown's bold invasion to destroy slavery at Harper's Ferry and his polarizing trial by the state of Virginia aroused the sympathy and anger that would help elect President Lincoln and eventually spark the Civil War. And as we're dealing with the Emancipation Proclamation, we need to know what brought about Lincoln, what spurred Lincoln to do what he did. I mean, he had to do it because the nation had been polarized. And as a result, there was just no easy outcome. Now, this is a statement by Frederick Douglass about John Brown. He says, John Brown's zeal in the cause of freedom was infinitely superior to mine. Mine was as the taper light. His was as the burning sun. I could live for the slave. John Brown could die for him. The American people and the government at Washington may refuse to recognize it for a time, but the inexorable logic of events will force it upon them in the end that the war now being waged in this land is a war for and against slavery. That's Frederick Douglass. So I just wanted to share that with you. And if anybody has any questions, I have answers, or I will tell you where to go to get them.
All right.
Google it.
One thing we're going to ask that you please repeat those telephone numbers and their website.
And we'll have them, the links will also be in the post. The links to the Blog Talk Radio, where you can also purchase the calendar and author Myeka Bevel's book as well. That will be provided in the post.
Awesome. And when you were speaking about Frederick Douglass, and I seen there with Sojourner Truth, because he was getting ready to go with, he was with Nat Turner. That's a different thing. So I'm going to leave that so much for that. John Brown. I love it. Great. Myeka, hey, give my sister another round of applause.
Yay!
This was amazing. Oh my gosh. You are such a treasure. And in my hand, I
have a song. Can I say a song?
You want to sing something?
It's just the chorus.
Is it something we can join with you on?
No.
This is a special woman. Yes.
Actually, this is a song that my son, James Luther Bevel II, wrote, and there's a third also. I only know the chorus, and I may can do a verse if I can remember. And this is in honor of Dr. King. Martin Luther King had a mighty dream that one day all people would be free and love one another like sisters and brothers, and America would live up to a creed.
Is that in that book too?
Wow.
Shut my mouth.
I've only known Myeka a few years, and only saw her 3 or 4 times a year, and it was never personal. We never really had a good conversation, but I always saw her as being very knowledgeable, outspoken, courageous, and when I say courageous, I mean a person of great faith. And so I had great respect for her. But when they put that book in my hand, and but even before I started skimming through the book, I'm telling you, my respect for her just blew out of the ballpark. And skimming through it, I saw the love that had been put into it. And thank you.
Yes, thank you, Myeka. Thank you. Thank God. I mean, I'm so glad that God chose me to do that, to do what I'm doing and did in the past. And I don't have any letters behind my name.
You do.
Because, well, there's a reason why I don't. Because my life is about serving God. I don't need letters. All I need is direction from God. And that's where I get my cue from.
I love it, Myeka.
Yeah, all that. We got our fist raised back here.
All right.
Oh, hey, all right now.
Solidarity.
Rising again. Rising again. And God, this time, we rise.
Wow.
Absolutely. And what I found is when you really look at our history, you can literally see God working through people to make things happen. I mean, when people went down to the court to register to vote in Selma, Alabama, they didn't just get up one day and say, well, I think I'll just go down to the court and let Jim Clark hit me upside the head and see if I can get in there and register to vote. No. Somebody had to inspire them and put the faith that God would protect them and be with them. And as a result, they were able to move out and do what they would normally never have done. This was a God movement to bring a people to freedom. And it's still a movement. That movement is still going on right now with each one of us right here and each one of you who's listening at this live broadcast and who listen later. There's nothing more to do but be a part of this movement. This is the greatness of life. This is where you don't get bored.
Oh, this is
You don't get
action.
you don't get depressed. And this is something that's exciting. There's always a new thing to do, a new thought to think, a new feeling to feel, new sounds to hear. Getting out of those 5 senses. The 5 senses actually lock you into the past. When you see something with your eyes, it's already gone. You see, just like a star. When we see stars, that light has been hundreds of years coming to us. Right? That's in the past. And when you hear something, that's gone too. It's already past. And we've been locked in the past by these 5 senses. So if you want to be in the present and you want to be in the now, You have to awaken your sense of feeling, your sense of thought, your intuition, and your ability to sound, to make sounds, and to be sound. These are the senses of the now, the present, that have to be activated. These are the ones that have been put to sleep with you. Okay? You're like ice in the past. You're like vapors in the future. And you're like free-flowing water in the now. So you want to live in the now. You are ice in the past. You're frozen. You can't do nothing. You're stuck. You're vapors in the future. They came into being. But in the now, you're free to flow. You're free-flowing water. You make it real. Your power is in the now. So all of you who get caught up in this should have been, this ought have been, this could have been, that's the past. Come out of the past. Come out of the past. Come into the present. And let God activate you in the present. Because God is living. He ain't stuck in no book.
All right now.
See, even Yeshua ben Joseph, Jesus had that problem. You know, the Sadducees and the Pharisees would come up and talk about what the Torah said. And Jesus said that God is a spirit. And those who worship God in spirit and in truth. So when God tells you to do something that ain't in the book, you just got to do it. Because what? Thy word have I hid in my heart that I may have not sinned against God. Your heart is your book. So this is where we have to go. This is what we have to be in the now. And what I heard was when we work for God, when we turn ourselves over to God, that's what God is. That's the only time God is obligated to do anything. God is obligated to take care of you and your family. Because the harvest is ripe and the workers are few. And he needs you as a worker. So, it's time to turn yourself over to God. Just turn yourself over. Stop worrying about what should I wear? What should I put on? What should I eat? Where should I live? God takes care of all of that. And I'm not just talking. I'm living from experience. This is my experience. I turned myself over to God 25 years ago, say, I heard you take care of bees and bugs and all that. Take care of me. Not a problem. God opened. I didn't have not a visible source of income. God opened hearts and God opened doors. For 25 years. He took me here. He took me there. He took me to places, even if I had $1 million, I wouldn't have known to go. And had wonderful experiences with his people. Strangers. When I wrote this book, a complete stranger invited me to her house to live in Washington, D.C. She sets up schools and institutions. Her name is Paulette Bell, Imam. And she just told me, she said, well, why don't you come teach in my school? And then you can stay with me at my house. Now, let me tell you something. She said, I ain't got time for a lot of chit-chat because I'm busy. I said, I don't either, Sister Paulette. I'm busy too. And I had a bedroom with a bathroom in it. And she bought printers and whatever I needed. She said, if you need to eat anything, just go to the refrigerator. Just don't bring no meat into the house. I said, cool. And this is how this book came into being. And that was in 6 months, unedited. That's how this book came into being. Because I had 24 hours to focus on that. I didn't have to worry about going to a job or, paying bills or anything like that. And so my mind could, follow God's thought and God's direction on what to put in it. So that's the story of this book. And it is a great conversation piece to have around, isn't it not? You can talk forever. I mean, you can just open the book to you can just open it to a page and it's like, wow, I didn't know that. That was God. Not me. I'm just a servant. And I'm thankful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you got to come again so we can get that special. Give it to her, please. God is good. God is good. this is a special treat. Really, really, really special. We have before us a treasure here. We have a treasure. Yeah.
A walk around prophet. This woman, when I first met her, she was just, I don't know if she was living here then or passing through, had a book signing, and she had what I call this tune with her. I was like, she was taking this around. But as I listened to her, because I didn't openly ask her any questions, I found out that she travels really globally to get these stories. This information that she has here, she's living it, she's breathing it. So my walk around prophet, I am glad to know you. Prophetess, is that how the women go? Thank you, Myeka.
And could you please once more give us your website as well as the telephone number? And you say you're going to be doing number 2 of your
For
interview.
Judge Joe Brown.
Part 2.
Okay, Judge Joe Brown is Thursday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. And the call-in number at the radio station is 515-605-9325. And if you want to speak, you press 1. And if there are too many, the telephone line can only take 50 callers. So if you're unable to get in, then you go to the website and you can listen on the website. I don't have it. Yeah, I do. I have it. It's the blogtalkradio.com/the-female-solution. And there you can get in on the broadcast online. And there's an archive, and you can go back and listen to the archive. The archive is very rich, not only with my show, but shows from other hosts throughout the week. But I have a lot of good stuff in my archive.
Yes,
But I got Judge Joe Brown. I think everybody needs to listen to that. I'm going to be in Memphis on April the 4th. Yes, I will. I'm going to meet Judge Joe Brown when I go down there because he lives in Memphis also. And the website is 365knowyourhistory.com. 365knowyourhistory.com. And there's one other website. It's called anewbeing.com. That's ANEWBEING.com. And it's full of great information. As a matter of fact, there's a slideshow there. If you're having problems with fear, you can pull up the fear slideshow. It's designed to heal you.
I love it. Again, I just cannot tell you thank you enough. Is there anyone from my audience who wants to ask a question? Oh, afterwards?
Want to on the show? Hold up one second. Hold up.
Yes. Okay. Hi, my name is Greta Myers. Okay. And I wanted to make sure I have the information correct. I'm like you. I don't believe in living in the past. It's about now. Because the past will hold me back, and like you said, it will keep me frozen. But I am, I want to know, you said, know your history, 365knowyourhistory.com. Am I correct?
Yes.
And that's information from you.
Well, that's where the calendar can be purchased. There's information on Dr. King there that can be gotten. Like, there's a great deal of information there about his assassination, what led up to it. And you can download that and have it in your archives. Yeah. And I was saying Judge Joe Brown I will be interviewing him this Thursday coming. And I interviewed him this past Thursday. Mm-hmm. No. 515-605-9325. And we have a good time on our show. You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you so very much. And now we just want to tell our viewers, and if you want online,
questions if we can respond there. But nevertheless, we're going to be wrapping up now. Queen Hostess Claudette, you want to give us some announcements?
I got a big announcement.
Whoa.
One of my favorite authors and mentor that has a lot to share with the world. She's going to be our featured authorpreneur next month here at the Melody of Joy Institute. And we will be glad to have you join us on the third Sunday at 3 o'clock in April as we share her great book, Born to be Rich. And believe you me, when you hear this sister's story, you'll agree. She is born to be rich. In fact, she is rich with love and her sharing of it for all who are within her realm of being. So we look forward to having Janine and Ingram of the Love Journey Inc. here with us next month. So until that time, you have some closing remarks?
Any closing remarks? You want to have a closing remark? One? Yes.
This is an unexpected guest, but speaking of Langston Hughes, we're going to have for you granddaughter of Mama Joy, Talia Woods, who's going to present a special surprise for you guys.
When I was in class, I learned this speech and it's called I Too Am America by Ernest Abdullah. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and grow short. Tomorrow, nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen when company comes. They'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America.
That is a surprise.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
That's
I
perfect.
too.
Oh, I get
Oh
so
my
excited with the
God.
children having this. They need them.
Oh, what a blessing. And you know, I had 3 of them this morning. And the other 2 said they wanted to go home and do something. She said, I'm going to go. So you had a message. I want to let you know God did that. God did that. So again, thank you so much for our viewing audience. I want to acknowledge also my program manager, Pearl Halima, who has the Pearls, Black Pearls World, and she also can be found. She does stories with the children, amazing stories. She reads books with some beautiful music and capture. So I encourage you to also talk to her. Do you want to tell us about that, Pearl? Well, thank you so very much. Today we are excited. We're in Chicago and the sun is shining. And so if there are no other comments.
Can we have an end quote by author Myeka?
Yes, I do.
Just something, an end quote before you.
I do.
From her book.
Are you going to find it? Because I have one.
For a close.
There was a quote that I have for you. All right. I wanted us to get into it, but we never. That's why you will be coming again.
Yeah, she got to come back.
Because the title of one of these stories is this: that the miseducation of females is the miseducation of a nation. And the quote that she has in here, of course, is hold this one. Assistant, I tell you. At the end of it, she says this: not one of us has escaped the scourge of slavery. And in our public or private life, we have and are violating ourselves. Others are both. Or we have healed ourselves and stopped the violations. We have not been taught to love ourselves, love others, and all of creation. We live in fear of a multitude of things that really can't harm us. But because we have been educated in such an unjust system and are ignorant to the ways of living life, having been taught only how to survive, we can't help ourselves. A new mindset is needed to recognize and to undo the wrong. We must redesign our personal thought system which has led to our pain, loss, and confusion. Healing only starts with the renewal of the mind. Healing is needed so that we can bring into being a collective system of justice and then educate ourselves to our true state of natural goodness and divinity. That's the quote I leave from Queen Myeka Helen Bevel. Please give her a hand.
I just want to tell you, I got a new book that I'm writing now. It's called The Pathology of the African American Female.
Wow.
Yes. Can you imagine that?
Wow, that's
Stories in that. Whoa.
So as we close, we thank each and every one of you for coming out. My closing. Don't forget to subscribe to, yes, hold your book. That's a tongue. Don't forget to subscribe to updates from TMOJI by clicking the links above, and more information on our featured guests and others on the panel. So don't hesitate to reach out for their books and other empowering products. And thank you for stopping by. So until next time, we want you to remember that the Emancipator lives in you. Hey!